After a period of intense biting, the princess finally calmed down. However, the princess was very angry about this matter and intended to punish me. I had intended to calm her emotions first, but the princess refused to listen to my explanation. Just then, a maid with short hair came to the door and claimed to be delivering dessert. Just as I was suspecting the identity of the maid, she rushed straight towards the princess. The princess is currently in crisis.
Moen lay on the ground, with a weak face and a lot of sweat flowing from his body. Celicia's white stockings were casually thrown on his head by her. He gasped for breath while silently saying in his heart, "Finally, it's over." Just now, Celicia, who had drunk black tea containing magic potion, crazily vented her emotions to Moen. She not only nibbled on Moen's chest and arms, but also left one red scratch after another on his body. After a while, Celicia finally calmed down. He recalled Celicia venting on him just now. He kept dodging the attack from Celicia just now, finally restraining himself from doing something that would lead him to that extent. I tried my best to dodge her and finally saved my pure body. Otherwise, if I take the last step and really do something like that to the princess, the outcome that awaits me is probably not exile, but really ruin. But now it seems that the situation is also similar. Moen closed his eyes, feeling helpless about the current situation between him and Celicia. At this moment, as he was still immersed in his own world, he did not notice that a sword had appeared on his face and pointed at him. Celicia held a sword condensed from ice magic, pointing with a serious expression and angry emotions towards Moen, who was still lying on the ground. She said coldly, "Say your last words, Moon Campbell. This is your last chance before you die." Just now her clothes had become a bit tattered due to her emotional outburst against Moen. However, it didn't matter. She was very angry at Moen for pouring an unknown drug into her tea. Seeing Celicia, who was clearly not in the right mood, Moen got a little nervous. He braced his hands on the ground and slowly stepped back while smiling awkwardly at her, intending to muddle through. "So if I don't say it, I won't." Upon hearing that Moen had no intention of saying her last words, Celicia decided to kill him directly. She cast her own ice magic, emitting a stronger frost aura. "Since you have no last words?" Moen noticed that what he had just said not only did not stabilize Celicia's emotions, but also made her even angrier. He took a few steps back in fear and raised a hand, trying to stop her from using magic. Wait a minute! I do. Let me think about it. For the current situation, Moen feels at a loss. Due to Celicia's extreme anger now, Moen was worried that she would rush towards him with her sword in the next second. This is too bad. If I hadn't managed to calm her down, I wouldn't have had to wait for the guillotine. I'd have been done for right then and there. I don't know if there will be a second chance of rebirth. He had to calm her emotions first. He was rapidly thinking of a solution in his mind. Given the circumstances, I can only use my modern wisdom to take a gamble. Moen lifted his head and spoke the modern language he had thought of to Celicia. Once there was a sincere love in front of me that I didn't cherish properly. I didn't regret it until I lost it. Celicia lowered her head, still holding her sword towards him. She frowned slightly and heard Moen saying something she had never heard before. "If God could give me another chance?" Moen looked at Celicia with sincere eyes and deep affection. He placed one hand on his chest, as if it would make him appear more sincere. He hoped that Celicia could stabilize her emotions due to his modern language. Unfortunately, Celicia was not moved by his words. She wrapped the entire sword in ice magic. She raised her sword and swung it forcefully towards Moen's head. In an instant, several strands of his hair were cut off by the sword. He raised his hands and looked at the top of his head in great fear. He was so scared that he let out a scream. Yikes! Celicia narrowed her eyes slightly and looked at him, her expression becoming more serious. She had no faith in what he said about love. She thought he could realize his mistake. but ended up wasting her time with such a long piece of nonsense. She felt even angrier about his lack of remorse. She held up her sword and augmented the ice magic on her body quite a bit more. I see, is this your disgusting reason? Moen's eyes flicked to the side. He scratched his head and smiled at her, trying to diffuse the awkwardness of the situation. Disgusting? In a sense, this can also be considered a very sincere emotion, and in fact, we haven't taken that step forward. So today, do you call this dirty, nasty tactic sincere? What are you joking about, Moen Campbell? Celicia shouted at him loudly. Hearing Moen say such words so unashamedly, she felt extremely angry. For someone like him who drugged her and turned her into that unpleasant appearance just now, how could there be any genuine emotions? She didn't approve of this kind of dirty person who would do anything to make him like her. If you really like me, you should stand in front of me openly and honestly, and use your character, your strength, and your sincerity to impress me like a real man. If I still don't like you after you do that, maybe in the end, I will also follow the engagement and become your wife. Moen froze in place, slightly widening his own eyes to look at Celicia. He had never seen her lose her composure and get angry with him before. But you chose to poison this most despicable and shameless means. Although Celicia was still pretending to be strong, her heart was hurt by Moen. Her emotions could no longer be controlled. She lowered her head slightly, tears streaming down her face. She gently wrapped her hand around herself, trying to calm her emotions at the moment. She couldn't forgive Moen for doing something that made her angry and sad. Seeing Celicia so heartbroken, Moen also felt a pang of guilt, realizing that he might have gone too far. At this point, he had no other choice but to apologize and come clean with her. I'm sorry, Celicia. I need to be honest with you. I had no other choice but to act this way. I just wanted a result, and had no intention of doing those offensive. However, Celicia could no longer listen to any of Moen's words now. As soon as Moen intended to stand up, she immediately swung the sword in her hand towards him. She said angrily while shedding tears, "Shut up, kneel down." Just as Celicia's sword was about to touch Leon's body, there was a knock on the door outside the room. Celicia noticed the knocking on the door and cautiously looked towards it. Moen, who was kneeling on the ground, also looked towards the direction of the door. Celicia put down her sword, grabbed Moen's neck with her other hand, and lifted him up forcefully. She coldly issued a warning to him. Tell the people outside to leave. Moen was choked by him, and his whole body was trembling with discomfort. He raised his hand, wanting her to loosen it a bit, but he didn't dare to struggle casually. He answered her intermittently. No, this room is soundproof. No sound can come in except for knocking on the door, and the sound inside cannot get out. Celicia felt somewhat dissatisfied. She didn't want anyone outside to come in and know what had happened in this room, but now she couldn't stop it either. She lifted her head and showed a disdainful expression towards him. Celicia released the hand that was holding onto Moen's neck and threw him to the ground. She gave him orders coldly. I'll spare your life for now. Put on your clothes and open the door. Moen suddenly lost his balance and fell to the ground. He covered his uncomfortable neck while lifting his head to respond to Celicia's words. Yes, yes. Moen quickly found and put on the clothes he had thrown somewhere in the room. He accidentally changed the plot of the story, so much so that he couldn't predict what would happen next. He helplessly closed his eyes and tidied up his collar with both hands. He silently analyzed the outcome in his heart that he could know. This is really bad. Now I only have 3 possible outcomes left. I'll either be killed by Celicia herself, publicly hanged by the angry king, or, like in the dream, cut to pieces in the dungeon by an unknown person. No matter which one, it's a dead end. Seizing the moment when Moen went to open the door, Celicia tidied up her dress and quickly picked up the tattered stockings, sitting on the sofa and putting them on. She doesn't want to be noticed for her disheveled appearance. Her eyes remained cautiously focused on the direction of the door, paying attention to any movements there. After finishing his clothes, Moen opened the door with a helpless expression. He sighed softly, assuming that the person coming through the door was Ariel, who had just rushed over not long ago according to the direction of the plot. So, protagonist, I almost did that kind of thing. What's the use of you only coming now? However, the voice of the person outside the door was not Ariel's voice. Young Master Moen. Moen opened his eyes. When he saw that the person outside the door was not his familiar Ariel or Anne, he felt a little surprised. He looked at her with confusion. The short-haired maid stood at the door of Moen's room, holding a plate of dessert and hot tea. She smiled at him and expressed her intention of coming here. The madam saw that you talked with Royal Highness Princess for a long time and thought you should be hungry. She specially asked me to send some dessert. It turns out that the maid just came over to deliver some food. Moen's tense mood relaxed a bit. He expressed his gratitude to the short-haired maid. Oh, thank you. He extended one hand and gestured for the short-haired maid to bring the dessert and tea into the room, while using the other hand to close the room door. Just put it on the table over there. The short-haired maid smiled and turned around, indicating that she had received instructions from him. Okay. The short-haired maid carried a tray and walked towards the nearby table. At this moment, Moen felt that the maid in front of him was not very familiar. He seems to have never seen her at home. He stood behind her and observed for a while, then said to her in confusion, "Hey, wait, how come it seems like I've never seen you before?" Upon hearing that Moen seemed to have doubts about her, the short-haired maid stopped. She closed her eyes and still smiled at him. She explained to Moen, "I was only elected to the Duke's mansion last night. It's normal for young Master Moen not to know me." Moen recalled yesterday's incident, and indeed she had told Anne to let the sick maids rest in their rooms and recruit new maids to cope with the shortage of maids in the Duke's mansion. However, when he saw the maid's attire, he remembered what Anne had said to him yesterday. "Oh, are you here to help with the banquet?" But I remember Anne said that because there were no extra maid uniforms, they only hired ordinary servants. Is that so? The next second, the short-haired maid opened her green eyes and her expression quickly changed from a smile to a cold one. Since Moen has discovered it, there is no need for her to continue acting. The short-haired maid cast her magic, enveloping herself in black magical energy and using it to charge into the room. Due to the intense magic she unleashed, the desserts and tea in her hands were thrown out. Moen was also influenced by her strong magical fluctuations and was blown to the position at the door of the room. He just realized that the short-haired maid was not an ordinary person. An assassin! He bumped into the door and fell to the ground. This made his back feel a wave of pain. However, he opened his eyes and noticed that the maid was rushing into the room instead of towards him. Just as he was pondering why, suddenly he realized that Celicia was still sitting on the sofa. He looked at the sofa in shock. "Wait, it's not for me, then it is. Celicia." Celicia looked at the commotion in the direction of the door in shock. Then, a maid with strong magical energy rushed towards her at a very fast speed. However, she just sat quietly on the sofa waiting for Moen to open the door, without taking any protective measures. The short-haired maid jumped into mid-air with the help of magical energy and raised 2 daggers hidden around her waist, cutting at Celicia. The strong magical aura she emitted made people feel scared. Immediately afterwards, the black magic energy collided with the blue magic energy, emitting a huge energy shockwave, causing some of the furniture in Moen's room to be blasted away. Moen crossed his hands again and raised them in front of him to protect himself. Their magical aura caused a gust of strong wind, even so intense that it was about to blow him away. The strong wind blew some furniture debris towards him, forcing him to close his eyes. He tried to lean against the door and maintain his body balance. Due to concerns about Celicia's condition, he slowly opened his eyes to confirm if she was safe now. "Celicia." Then a sound of weapon impact echoed through the room. When Celicia realized that the purpose of the short-haired maid was her, she immediately summoned the ice sword and blocked her 2 daggers. The short-haired maid is not to be outdone. She clenched her weapon tightly and pushed toward Celicia with all her strength. Celicia didn't provoke anyone tonight. How could an assassin suddenly come to kill her? She guessed in her heart that there would be no one else besides the brother who hated her. She tentatively asked the short-haired maid, "Did my foolish brother send you here?" The short-haired maid sneered disdainfully. She doesn't need to tell Celicia too much information. Then she put down harsh words to Celicia. "Sorry, the employer's information is top secret, and you don't need to know, Your Highness. Today you will surely die here." Suddenly, for some unknown reason, several golden magic circles appeared on the walls of Moen's room. These magic circles condense magical energy into golden orbs of light. Then the short-haired maid loudly announced to Celicia, "The third princess of the Empire was assassinated at the Duke of Campbell's mansion. This is your finale." Subsequently, these light balls transformed into one lightsaber after another and shot towards Celicia. The golden light shone on Celicia, making it difficult to see how she would respond to them.